ahead and start. Let's go. John chapter 6, verse 22. Now, here's how we're going to do it this morning. I wish we could say that we could finish the whole thought through. This morning, I just want to lay out the challenge, the problem. Next week, the answer. If you don't come next week, well, you can still find the answer. Amen? This is on the heels of when Jesus fed the multitude. We spent a couple of weeks into that. This is right afterwards. So in verse 22, it's picking up after that account. Here it is. On the following day, when the people who were standing on the other side of the sea saw that there was no other boat there except that one which his disciples had entered, and that Jesus had not entered the boat with his disciples, but his disciples had gone away alone. However, that was very confusing if you didn't read before that, but however, other boats came from Tiberias near the place where they ate bread after the Lord had given thanks. When the people therefore saw that Jesus was not there, nor his disciples, they also got into their boats and came to Capernaum seeking Jesus. And when they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, Rabbi, when did you come here? Jesus answered them and said, Most assuredly I say to you, you seek me not because you saw the signs, but because you ate of the loaves and were filled. Verse 27, do not labor for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to everlasting life, which the Son of Man will give you, because God the Father has set his seal on him. Okay? Next week, we'll move through this passage, but I first want to set it up today. The idea was this. Jesus had just fed the multitudes. The disciples got into the boat, went to the other side of the sea. Jesus actually, the little account between the two, Jesus actually walked on water till he got into the boat, and they went to the other side. The people recognized that Jesus wasn't where he was at, didn't see him get in the boat, but put two and two together, he must be over there. They get over there, they find Jesus. Kind of a ridiculous question. They said, Jesus, how did you get over here? I mean, was it by train? Was it by plane, right? But I love the way Jesus always never answers the question, right? He didn't say, well, I walked. Okay, he didn't say that. He always somehow gets through the superficial, doesn't he? And goes right to the issues of the heart. And he says, I say to you, you seek me, not because you saw the sign, which was feeding the multitude, but because you ate of the loaves and were filled. Okay. So today I want to look at two things, just real quickly, okay? Number one, how did I write it down? People sometimes seek him for the wrong reasons. Number one, right? And number two, sometimes we labor for the things that perish. Those are the two things. Number one, sometimes we find ourselves seeking Jesus for the wrong reasons. On the surface, it seemed pretty honorable to me. They're looking for him. They're searching for him. They get in their boats. They go the distance. But really, Jesus identified that they really weren't coming after him or to follow him because of the impact that he has made upon their life. They really just followed him because of some sense of self-satisfaction, that they benefited in some way, namely being filled, just having a good meal given to them. And that was enough to keep them searching, but not to change their life, not to have a transformation of life. It was really just to do what? Just to have their material needs met. Now, as I was thinking about that this morning, I kind of go through seasons where sometimes my priorities shift, and sometimes I do just kind of go after Jesus for the things that he adds to my life, the benefits in my life, right? Not because I'm sometimes seeking after him as a person and the fact that the wonderful things he's done in me. Sometimes I get distracted and just try to get a hold of him so that I can get some things done for me. How's that? Does that make sense? I mean, sometimes our prayers are even that way. Instead of saying, Lord, open the eyes of my heart that I may know your calling, know your power, know your strength. Sometimes it's just, Jesus, I need you to help me pay my electric bill. Okay? And we spend great effort sometimes, even in our prayer life. But if we could just kind of analyze our prayer life, it would be interesting to see if we could just kind of record it and see the emphasis of your prayer life. Because prayer in general is a work of labor at times. There is energy put into it. How much of our energy is really just spent looking for Jesus to give us something and to help meet whatever predicament that I'm in this particular time of my life. Something material, right? Like if someone came to me, I mean, you've had people say, hey, John, could you pray that maybe I could get a raise in my job? John, could you pray that the Lord will help provide my utility bill? Or John, could you pray that, different things like that. But isn't that really what we're laboring for? Things that actually perish in that kind of prayer life versus maybe, John, could you pray that my eyes would be open and I could see Jesus like I've never seen him before, that my heart would be strengthened, that I could follow him like I've never followed him before? That kind of prayer, right? See, my thing is, don't ask me for a raise. Like, Jesus, I need a raise. No, here's what I would say. Hey, just show up at work earlier, work a little later, work while you're there, and hopefully in time, you'll get a raise. Amen? Are you with me? Sometimes we want God to take the little sardine and do something awesome with it in our life. But sometimes it's just good old-fashioned hard work, isn't it? If you want your electric bill paid, don't call me to ask you to pray for it. Go get a job, okay? All things are possible that worketh and that payeth. Amen? That's what I'm saying. Sometimes we're just laboring for things that are perishing. Jesus said that that's kind of the way the Gentiles pray, right? He said, you're so concerned about so many different things. You're concerned about the food you're eating. You're concerned about the clothing that you're wearing. What does he say? Those are the things that what? The Gentiles seek after. You don't have to worry about that because my Father in heaven knows exactly what you need, right? Knows exactly what you need. So what should we be putting our emphasis in then? Well, Jesus said this, don't worry about the material things in life. Seek first what? My kingdom. Seek first the kingdom, and then all these other things will be added unto you. So here's the point. You can seek things, and you'll lose everything. You can seek his kingdom, and you'll gain everything. How's that? Right? If you're not seeking the kingdom, then by implication, things will be subtracted from you. But if you are seeking his kingdom, things will be added to you. You don't have to worry about the material provision that Jesus offers in your life. That has already been given to you. Amen? Are you with me on that? Quit laboring to have your material needs met. Put your energies into something that is lasting, because those things that you really need today will be provided for you. If the car breaks down, I don't pray, oh God, give me a new car. I just pray, God, let me go find one and buy one. Amen? You know what I'm saying? He will provide for it. I don't have to worry about that. So my point is this. Don't seek him for the wrong reasons. Don't seek him. Don't put your prayer life on self-satisfying things. Turn your prayers outward. Turn them towards others. Turn them towards the kingdom. Turn them towards the world in which you live in. And all these other provisions will be given unto you. Amen? That's the first thing. Number two, here it is. We do labor often for things that perish. We put our efforts towards the wrong things that don't seem to last. Isaiah 55 says this, why do you spend your money on things that don't satisfy? Now think about what we're saying here now. You go to work every day, you put your energies into things, you put your efforts into things, you generate income. But it's what we do with our life. It's what we do with our income. And I think that's probably what financial peace can help some of you, is that, you know what? Don't make all your investments into the things of this world, into things that will not satisfy. Amen? And we know that. We already know that that's the case, that there's not any one thing. So Jesus challenged him. What did he say? He said, do what? But labor for the food which endures to everlasting life. So why don't we just say it this way? This year, we need to change our diet, don't we? We need a different diet. We need a diet that is not focused upon things that perish, but a diet that brings the right stuff into my life. Maybe a diet that helps, what do we call it, put meat on my bones, right? Not a cotton candy diet, something that's here today and gone tomorrow, but more of a meat and potato metaphorical, okay? Something that is sustaining, something that strengthens you to put your efforts towards that. Now, here's an interesting thought I had. Jesus talked about when we put all of our emphasis in things in this world, and most of our energies, he said what you're doing is you're actually building up something that moth, rust, and thieves can break in and to destroy. Now, I want you to think about something here. If all of my energies are going into things, a certain type of lifestyle, Jesus said, you are not, what do we call it, protected from moth, rust, and thievery. Now, I want you to think just for a minute here. I want you to bring this out. Moths, interestingly enough, do not eat fabric. Moths are not even capable of eating fabric because they don't have a teeth to do such a thing. It's their larvae that actually eat the fabric of our clothing, okay? It's what the moth produces that begins to weaken and to unravel, and maybe we could say it this way, the fabric of our life. Are you with me? Rust is also a very slow process, but it is corrosive and also begins to weaken and break down the very structure of metal. So let me say it this way. When we put our efforts and energies into a certain type of life, which I will just call a lifestyle to help us understand it, and it's not the lifestyle that Jesus is offering, then what happens is we are susceptible to things that will begin to weaken our life, to begin to break down our life, and will begin to disintegrate our lives. Are you with me? In other words, the energies that we're putting ourselves into is really kind of a lifestyle. It's a certain type of life that you're trying to live. Now, next week is the answer. Jesus offers a different kind of life. But first, let's just say it this way. We put a lot of energy to develop a certain type of lifestyle. But if that lifestyle is not something that is from above, let's say, what Jesus would offer, what we're going to talk about next week, then what happens is that lifestyle, instead of being something that builds us up and strengthens us, it is a lifestyle that begins to erode and to take away and weaken us as people, okay? Now, I'll give you an example here just for a second. I'm just trying to make my point first. But like I see something like this, and I just was reading out a book. It was recommended to me the last couple of weeks ago. It's called Sacred Pace, okay? It's the name of the book. It's a decent book, okay? I'm not recommending that you guys buy it, okay? But what it's about this guy that was very successful, became very successful by the time he was 30 years old. It's a Christian book. He's trying to find God's rhythm in his life. But he was very successful by the time he was 30-something years old. He had a little oil company type of thing in Houston. All of his goals were coming true. His family, the way of life that he had chosen. He's flying all over the country, blah, blah, blah. But by the time he was 32 years old, he woke up one day and couldn't even get out of bed. He had a complete emotional breakdown. Okay? Complete emotional breakdown. Marriage is falling apart. His life is falling apart. Internally. Externally, seemingly all very good. Top of his game, very successful. But what are we saying? The type of life that you put your energies in can at the same time be growing on the outside, but breaking you down on the inside. Are you with me? And that's what you have with this fella that I'm talking to you about. Yes, on the surface, he was having or obtained the lifestyle they'd always wanted, but on the inside, he became an emotional and mental wreck. And it took months for him to pull himself out of that dark pit. Sometimes I look at the next generation. I'm not picking anybody on the front row here, okay? Don't think I'm doing this, okay? Okay. The names will be changed to protect the innocent, okay? It's not going to be Ben, it's going to be Don. Okay, Don. Yeah. I always got to be careful to talk about the next generation because you guys are sitting right in front of me, okay? But I love you guys. I'm very proud of y'all, okay? But here's one thing I've seen in the next generation. Conrad, I'm not looking at you either, Connor, okay? I mean, everywhere I turn around, I'm seeing the next generation. I'm looking at old people only. Well, I can't even do that. That's insulting, okay? But here's what I've noticed. Now, let me tell you something. Here's what I've noticed. We have become one of the most unhealthiest people in the world. Did you know that? Spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, and physically. We have been given a lifestyle passed down from our parents, not just John Sr., but you know what I'm saying? Passed down from our forefathers. And it's breaking us down. I don't have to give you the stats of that. I don't have to tell you that the American dream is literally corroding our lifestyle, our personal lives is what I'm trying to say, right? I was told the other day by Amanda over here that this next generation, my grandson's generation, Nathan's generation, is going to be the first generation that on a greater percentage will not outlive their parents that America has ever produced. Why is that? Because it's like the larvae of the moth. We have bought into something that we're putting our energies into, and it's literally destroying the next generation. And we are unhealthy, not just physically, but every indicator, what makes a healthy society. America is being weakened, and the very fabric of what makes this a nation is being literally destroyed. Did you know that? That's why we see mental illness shooting through the roof, physical illness shooting through the roof, social problems of isolation and anxieties and loneliness shooting through the roof. We have literally embraced an idea, put our energies into this idea, but what is happening now, it has become like moth and rust. And we are the richest nation and probably the most unhealthy nation in all the industrial world. Are you with me? If you do not believe me, just Google it. Okay? It's enough to get anybody depressed. Okay? Are you with me? Right? People in the nursing, you know for sure what I'm talking about, at least on the physical. But I'm going to tell you something. We're just as dead spiritually. Okay, we are. I mean, it's the craziest thing. Think of the futility of all this. We have just look in Bastrop. The state-of-the-art hospitals that we have in one city. The fact that Bastrop, look at the medical services that we offer. And can I tell you something? If you've ever tried to see a doctor in Bastrop, it's almost impossible to get into him. Do you know that? If I told you today, go find you a doctor, you may take 3 months. I mean, you may be proud that we have such state-of-the-art hospitals, but we had to build it because we're such bad shape. You know what I'm saying? If we weren't so sick, we wouldn't need so many hospitals. That's the futility of it all, right? It's demanded that we have state-of-the-art hospitals because of how unhealthy we really are, body, mind, and spirit. Because we have bought into an idea, we have placed our energies into it, and I'll get back to the millennials just in a second, but we've bought into an idea, put our energies in it, and all we've discovered now is that moth and rust corrode and gnaw at it and unravel our very lives. I read a book several years ago about immigrants that come over here to find a new life, and they're seeing their kids literally being swept away in lifestyles of addiction and all kinds of stuff. They came here for freedom. What they find is the complete disintegration of their family in America. Isn't that something? And the reason I say about the millennials is because it's weird as a parent. You always want your kids to achieve more than you. You always are wanting them to let your floor be their ceiling. But I'm going to tell you something. Why do I want to pass on the very thing that is killing us? Isn't it the weirdest thing? I mean, I look at my own kids and I'm thinking, my gosh, get a little more ambition. Man, that's my problem. I've been ambitious my whole life. But I'm really should be happy the fact that they're not putting all their energies into a certain life that is just doing nothing but disintegrating people's lives. My point is that even in this young generation, and like I said, I'm not picking on anybody in here. I mean, it's going to seem to be like I am, but I'm really not. I'm talking about the kids down the street there, okay? But it's funny, and y'all know that if you guys got kids in 2030, you know they want to live in the same house it took you 30 years to get to. Right? Isn't that true, Ray? My guys, they want to go buy your house and they're 21. They think that's what they're supposed to get, right? You're wanting them to go live in an RV for 5 years to appreciate life. But no, they're shocked. Isn't that the truth? My grandparents lived in a $14,000 house, a little bitty thing, like a 1,000 square foot home. 20, 22, 23, 24, 25-year-olds living in homes that we only dreamed of when we were younger. I still can't afford the one I'm in. They're bigger homes than me. But I'm going to tell you something. This is my point. At what cost? I see marriages breaking down. I mean, hey, at least we could stay married for 15, 20 years, not 1 and 2 years. At what cost? The breakdown of the family, kids out of control, marriages on the rocks, people working here, working there, 2 and 3 jobs to try to make ends meet. You know what I'm saying? At what cost? Because we're putting our energies into things, we're laboring for things where moth and rust and thieves come in and steal it. I'm looking at my own life, looking at my own kids. We could say one of two things. We could either say millennials are just not as motivated as we were, or we could just say millennials are just smarter than we are. Because they saw the lifestyle we embraced and saw how it almost ruined half of their lives. They see their parents dying at 50 years old and 60 years old. They see them dying of heart attacks. They see getting divorced, remarried, divorced, remarried. I mean, they see it. They don't like the church either because we bought into the same type of lifestyle. We're trying to incorporate the whole of a person into a certain way. We're only seeking Jesus sometimes for the things that he's provided for us. Thieves come in and steal. The Bernie Madoffs, the Enrons, people's whole lives are wiped out overnight. Reminds me of the story I heard about this old grandmother, been your grandmother, and she had all of her money tied up into an investment. And her financial advisor Ponzi schemed it. Lost every cent that she had, 70 years old. She calls up wanting to check on her money. The secretary told her, I'm just going to let you know that all the money's been lost, and your advisor tragically jumped out of a window, committed suicide to his death. Lady calls back up next week, asked to speak to her financial advisor. The secretary said, well, I'm sorry, ma'am, I just want you to know he's no longer with us. He jumped out of the window, killed himself. Okay, hangs up, calls the next week again. Asked to speak to her financial advisor. After several weeks of that, the secretary says, ma'am, I don't know what else to tell you. He jumped out of the window. And she said, I know, I just want to keep hearing that. Now that was funny, I got to tell you. Thieves come in and steal it. Do not labor for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to everlasting life. Next week, I want to look at this. Jesus offers an alternative life. A life that is enduring, a life that builds up, a life that will go the distance, a life that builds and sustains. Jesus calls it the abundant life. He is saying this. It is not he's offering, whoa, there's a, I'm sorry. He is not saying he has something for you. He says he has himself for you. He becomes the true bread given from heaven that you may have life. He's not offering answers. He's offering himself. That's why I kind of set it up. Why don't we say next week, there's a different diet. And it's a diet that comes from above. And it's not just a diet that fills temporarily like cotton candy. It is a diet, a life that begins to meet the most fundamental needs of our life. And it brings health and healing. Amen? That's what we want, right? I think that was 5 seconds too quick. Okay, but go ahead, Ben.